Welcome to What Do We Do Next? I am excited to welcome Paige Loud today. She is a social worker and candidate for Congress. She has dedicated her life to serving her community as a social worker, focusing her career on assisting others, from hospice care to supporting adults with intellectual disabilities, as well as helping her neighbors overcome housing shortages, food insecurity, and barriers to accessing medical care. From kitchen tables to the state capitol, Paige has spent her life fighting to change the systems that fail working families and is bringing her firsthand experience to the rural struggles her firsthand experience of rural struggles to Washington. As citizen of the Cherokee Nation, Paige's upbringing in a tiny, impoverished community sparked her passion for service. She has a deep understanding of the issues hurting rural Maine and how policy failures translate into real suffering, which drives her commitment to developing policies that center on people and not politics. Before moving to Maine to attend the University of Maine, first as an undergraduate and now as a graduate student, Paige was a resident of Oklahoma. Paige has fallen in love with the people and traditions of Maine, above all, its sense of community and the care neighbors have for one another. As Congresswoman, Paige is committed to embodying the tenacity, resilience, and compassion that make living in Maine the way life should be. Paige currently lives in Old Town with her husband, Aaron, and their 3 pets. So, welcome to the show today. Thank you for being here, Paige. I know you have a big event tonight, your launch event, so thank you for taking time to be here with us.
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much for having me. Yes, we're having our launch party. Finally, we had to postpone it because we got 19 inches of snow on the original launch day.
Of course. Well, you're all way up there, and are you in Bangor, Maine?
I'm 10 minutes north of Bangor.
Wow,
so most people
amazing.
recognize Bangor, but I'm even further north on an inland island.
Which I didn't even think was possible, to be honest, like further north than Bangor. And fun fact, I spent a little time in Bangor in 1997 on fish tour at the Great Went. I drove all the way up there and camped in a tent on a large runway. Good times, the things you'll do in your 20s, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
but
Maine,
beautiful.
vacation land.
I couldn't believe how absolutely beautiful it was up there and how nice people were. I was taken aback because people made all these signs welcoming us into town, and every little shop you could tell was like family owned. And it was just a very different vibe than growing up in Northern Virginia. So I can definitely see, how you fell in love with it. So let's get right into it. You are running for Congress. And you have got a lot of competition on the ballot, so there's it's a busy landscape there. But I really feel that you have a voice that people want to hear because you're very relatable. And I love the fact that you're a social worker. So what I really want to do is kind of get right into it. And let's talk about the Medicaid scandal in Maine, because I'm so sick of people screaming, fraud, waste, and abuse, and that they're really getting the whole story wrong. So what should people know? What happened? What happened with the Medicaid scandal in Maine?
Yeah, so I'm so excited to be here to talk about this. It's one of those topics where I'm so embedded in it personally, but also professionally, and not seeing any of our elected officials or other candidates even willing to confront it has been really frustrating, because the Republicans, nationally are using Medicaid and Medicaid funds and these accusations of fraud to scapegoat and really push all the blame on immigrants, when in reality it's just a very flawed system. And so, yeah, I've worked in this for 3 years, and I've worked with adults who had intellectual disabilities. I helped them find housing in some of these programs that the Audit worked with. And so in 2025, they audited rehabilitative and community supports, which is RCS services. And that is providing children who have intellectual disabilities or autism with behavioral support to help with skill building. And this isn't just developmental, it's behavioral, mental health, some physical disabilities. And more importantly, they audited mostly ABA interventions, which is applied behavioral analysis. And that takes a lot of different notes. And so something I think, a lot of people misconstrue when they think of Medicaid services is that nurses and professionals provide these services and they walk away, right? They provide the services and we just have to trust them that they provided them. So there's a lot of documentation in social work. And what CMS, the Center of Medicaid Services, did was they audited 100 cases from 2023. And all 100 had to have found deficiencies. They were flagged for improper or potentially improper payments. And the problems that we saw were billing more times than was actually documented, billing during other therapy sessions, two staff billing at the same time, missing signatures, vague notes, billing during meals or breaks or whenever maybe the client was sleeping. And they're arguing that at least $45.6 million of federal funding should be returned to the United States of America, to the federal government. They're saying that Maine stole this money, and the Republicans in Maine are saying that it was only Somali-owned providers that were doing this. And so that's kind of the facts, is that we did have an audit and we did fail that audit, but now we don't see anyone in the state government explaining what that audit actually found. And we're kind of just giving Republicans this chance to build the story, to build the narrative, and say, it was these Somali-owned agencies, and it was all in Lewiston. And I think what most people in Maine don't know is there's over 200 provider agencies across the state. And so it's a much larger issue. And it's more of a structural issue than just, let's just bill double,
Is there a lot of Somali owned like childcare? Is this like a thing? Like, why are they such a target of all of this? It just feels wildly inappropriate, So let's talk about like this money. So where does the government expect, who is pushing all of this? Who is pushing this narrative, right? Because that's what it really makes me wonder. Because, we've all taken our car for inspection, and you can have one little thing wrong and you fail. That doesn't mean that like you stole the car and you wrote it in hot and you're going to go like rob a bank afterwards. It just means that one thing failed. So what do you think is behind all of this? Is this just this narrative to keep the right in power? I mean, who wins from that messaging?
No, it's an important question. And, the truth of the audit was there were no findings of fraud or potential fraud. There were zero findings of potential fraud. It was just incorrect documentation. And so whenever CMS came out and made this big video about Maine committing fraud, they weren't being really honest about the results of the audit. Kind of like in Minnesota, there were founded cases of possible fraud, and that was noted in the audit. That was not the case in Maine. I know that the state government and Janet Mills have said that they believe this is, political retribution, which we have seen this administration do in the past to Maine in many different forms. They've tried taking our food from kids. They've tried, at one point they made it to our hospitals couldn't release birth certificates, or couldn't sign up newborn babies for Social Security numbers in the hospital. They were going to make the mothers, like, they tried canceling it, and we had to have a judge give like an emergency order being like, what are you doing? This is not legal. And so they've just been creating chaos and havoc in Maine since Janet Mills stood up to him. But if you're asking someone that works in the field, I truly believe this is all a way for this administration, and specifically RFK Jr., to get their ultimate goal of reinstitutionalization. We see on a large scale in different sectors, in like whether it's the government or private nonprofits that advocate for institutionalizing people that need more help, or the health farms that RFK Jr. talked about whenever he was first nominated to this position. People have been trying to reinstitutionalize adults with intellectual disabilities since the Olmstead Act, with the Supreme Court, was ruled in 1999. they've been constantly trying to get them back into these places where they're not part of their communities. And so I think these constant attacks on these specific services really have a lot to do with them trying to make people not want to fund these community-based programs and services, and kind of take them out of societies. They're the easiest to kind of just expend. And that's kind of how I feel the Republicans are handling the situation, or the Democrats are handling the situation as well. I think sometimes Democrats are very easy to throw a population under the bus whenever it doesn't fit their narrative or it doesn't help their cause. A lot of people with intellectual disabilities don't donate. They don't vote. A lot of them can't work just because of their disability. And so they're not seen as valued members of our society. They're seen as a liability, and they're seen as something that's easy to let scapegoat. So that's what I see. And it's why I decided to run for Congress. In last October, the government shut down. I had 18 clients, all who had intellectual disabilities, from, nonverbal to incredibly affluent, and they had jobs and stuff, but everything in between. And 15 of those 18 required food stamps to survive. That's how they lived. That's how they ate. And whenever the government shut down and DHHS Maine sent us all an email saying we weren't going to get DHHS funds, I received 15 phone calls from adults who have intellectual disabilities asking how they were going to get food. And I had to be like, I don't know. When it comes to that, like, food banks are not Medicare covered services. So your Medicare covered transportation cannot take you there. And I know you live 30 minutes to the closest food bank. And so it was coming to terms with all of that, and then just seeing how the rhetoric was affecting my clients. And I was like, this is not okay. I have to do something. So I ran for Congress.
Tell me a little bit more about the Olmstead Act, because I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah. So we began institutionalizing people, I believe in the 1800s. Someone is going to correct me on that number, but I believe it was in the 1800s. And, a really good example of this is Pineland in Maine, which was shut down in 1996 after tons of lawsuits for abuses. They had people from, infancy to adulthood in this place where major abuses were happening, whether that's emotionally, physically, sexually. And deinstitutionalization became kind of the norm in the 90s. And then there was a Supreme Court case, the Olmstead Act, and that was ruled in 1999 that it prohibited the discrimination of people with disabilities. And it was to help force states to move to integrate people into their communities where they could receive the care they needed, but could do it on their own terms in their own chosen communities. And so a lot of the work that I've actually done is there's two different services under this deinstitutionalization, and it's home and community-based services, or HCBS, which is what I did most of my work in, and that's adults. This helps them live in their own homes or their communities, and this is older adults, physical, intellectual, developmental disabilities, and a lot of complex medical needs. And then RCS, which is the rehabilitative and community supports, and that's mostly for children. I haven't done a lot of work with children, but I've worked with a lot of young adults who are transitioning from RCS to HCBS. And if you talk to any of these parents or any of these clients, case managers and care providers in this field are overworked. They're overworked, they're underpaid, like most care services. But this is in a field with a population that society's already kind of given up on. So we're just constantly begging for scraps. And then, most recently in Janet Mills' response to the audit, she said that she had made a lot of changes in licensing and different auditing requirements and different documentation standards. And I think people that work in Washington or work in like a state house or are an auditor can really want those documentation requirements, but I don't think they've actually done the documentation to see how much time that actually takes. And when you make such strong requirements, when a worker is overworked and they can't do that, then you get an audit where all of them fail. Working with people in RCS and HCBS services is a little bit different than most healthcare professions because you're not trying to heal anyone. You're not trying to fix anyone. You're not trying to change anyone. You're just trying to give them the quality of life that they want to have. And you're trying to let them experience risk in a way that is safe for them. And so you have clients who don't shower. You have clients who don't clean their rooms. You have clients who only eat, McDonald's every day, but that is their choice. There are human beings out there like me and you who aren't under waivers or who aren't being cared for under Medicaid dollars, and we get to make those decisions. We can decide to not do our laundry. We can decide to not shower. And so these workers are doing everyday things with these clients or consumers. And they expect us to document every single thing we do. So if I took, for instance, and this is where the audit gets like a little testy and how I'm really excited to talk about it. Because what they found was that, let's say a BHP, which is a behavioral health professional, took her client to PetSmart, super popular place to take kiddos. And their community supports. It's a great place for them to see the animals, but to also, mingle. It's a safe, controlled environment where we can practice like regulation and behavioral skills. A BHP is supposed to write like 2 paragraphs about their trip to that store and write down every single thing that child did. Let's say they do that 3 times a week. They found in the audit that there was copy paste type notes. And it's like, well, some of these people do the same thing every day. Some of us do the same thing every day. If I had to write a note, a journal, a log about my day every day, you would think that I copy and pasted it.
Listen, some guy named Chad just got $10 million using AI to write a business plan. So, the whole thing is bullshit. You know what I mean? They're
Yes.
not allowed to copy paste, but, this guy can raise millions of dollars off of, Claude. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Different rules.
And, it's so frustrating because I've done the documentation and I've been in those systems where you're told, no, you have to document more. No, you have to document more. Well, you also have to bill for those documentation hours. And so these people that are auditing and they're creating these regulations never really do the work. So of course it looks like we're not doing the work. When we have 20 clients and we have to do notes for all of them and spend hours a day with them, making sure they're safe and that we're trying to improve the quality of their life with all of this happening, it's ridiculous. It's very frustrating. And seeing the audit results, I was like, that is not fraud. That is the system working the exact way it was supposed to work.
The whole system is rigged. For a short period of my life, I was a hotel analyst and I traveled around. I was a secret shopper for hotels, resorts, and casinos, and I had to do the same thing. I had to write ad nauseum, I approached the counter and was greeted by Susan, who was wearing a red dress, and said, you know what I mean? And I mean, it was an insane amount of writing, so I can kind of on a very, very small level understand. It was just ridiculous, boring word salad that didn't really matter and wasn't really moving the needle, so I get it. What should people know right now? Because the thing that thinking about these people that can't even get to a food bank because they're 30 minutes away, and I'm actually legally disabled because of the amount of surgeries that I've had, and the one time I went on disability, it was the worst time of my life. I was on it for 3 weeks, maybe a month, and a number of phone calls that I had to make. They kept cutting me off of it. I mean, I'd paid into that system my whole life, and I literally had a 4-inch scar from one side of my neck to the other. I couldn't leave my house, and I'm having to call every day. You know what I mean? It was so demoralizing and humiliating, and I'm a capable person. You know what I mean? I'm on depending on who you ask, of course, in the day of the week, but for the most part, I'm a capable person. And so, I can't even fathom the amount of fear and insecurity, dealing with all these changes and everything. For a lot of these people, this has got to be just so much. And so what should people know about What should they be asking these other politicians? What should they be talking about with their neighbors? What should they be saying when these conversations come up? And then how do we advocate to change that? Because in my mind, but me and my dad get into it a lot, and I've been telling him for years, follow the money, follow the money. It's it's private prisons, right? And like it's the same thing with ICE right now. Why are they, if we're deporting people, why are you building detention centers? It doesn't make any sense. It's the same thing. Bodies in beds means dollars for the certain corporations. But like the problem is that we live in a society that's like, been doing active shooter drills in their schools for 2 generations. You live in a society of a lot of damaged people where we're witnessing war and genocide and hunger and famine and all these things. So there are going to be people who need more of those services, not less of those people. So it is just a flawed plan from every angle, from humanity, from business. It just doesn't make any sense. So how do we fight against it? Aside from, voting for you and going to your website, loudforcongress.com, awesome website. Aside from that, like what should we do? How can we help? What should people in Maine be asking their local politicians? What should they be doing? How can they help get people to food banks if they're 30 minutes away?
Yeah.
There's a lot of questions, I realized. Unrelated sort of too, so I apologize for that.
No, that's okay. Loaded question. I think the main thing we should be thinking about, no one is asking if these services were actually provided. No one's asking if the children that were, receiving these services were actually being taken care of, or if they actually received any of the services that, we apply to as case managers. I think a really big misconception is you get Medicaid waiver funding and your life everything's just given to you. You just have a case manager and you call her up and you ask for something and I can just get it to you. That's not the case. And a lot of what this audit found was, like missing signatures. There were so many times where I filled out applications for prior authorizations for like an assessment, and it would get denied and denied and denied because I didn't have the right signature in the right spot. Right. But I'd be sitting at a kitchen table with a mother of a nonverbal man who needs this assessment, and we're waiting 6 months because the state of Maine, DHHS, kept denying the authorization. And it's like that across the country. We've privatized public funds, and, that's neither here nor there. But if we're going to privatize it, we need to make sure it's standardized as well. We have, thousands of agencies across the country working under different guidelines and different rules, and it leads to fragmentation, not only in services, but also in documentation and stuff. And so I think at the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves, why are we counting pennies when it comes to adults or children receiving care, but we don't blink an eye whenever we spend billions of dollars on locking up our neighbors or bombing children in another country? I would love to sit down and have like a constructive conversation with people on all sides of this issue, because I don't think that Democrats can run from this, because the Republicans are not running from this. They're running into it. They want to talk about it. They want to dissect it. And I think the people that are actually affected by this, the actual clients, they would also like to sit down and dissect this and talk about this. I think a lot of us know people with intellectual disabilities, or we know people that can't access resources, and they're in our lives and they're in our communities right now. And in Maine, we're really lucky. We have a ton of nonprofits and mutual aid coalitions who are ready and willing to help. And in this really since the government shut down, whenever SNAP funding was about to go away, we've seen a mobilization of thousands of people of all ages. Not that Maine is very diverse in age or race, but we've seen pretty much everyone come together and say, no, we have to take care of our neighbors. It's a huge thing that my campaign is doing. When we can finally raise enough money to open our office, we're building a mutual aid hub, and we're doing mutual aid outreach across the state, working with other different, organizations and wood banks. And I think Maine's a really great place to help your neighbor, because that's how you have to survive in a place like Maine. That's, so cold for half the year. You can't really leave your house or your neighborhood. And so you rely on your neighbors, and you can do that in Maine. And I love that, because you could not do that where I was born and raised in Oklahoma. That's not the type of community that you usually find. But I think focusing on helping your neighbors, and when you see a need, just if you can fill it, great. You know, I was like talking to my husband, like, how do I go and get these food boxes for my clients? Like, what is the map I have to take to hit all of them in like 2 days? You know, that's like the least costly, because I'm going to have to pay for my own gas money. But like, also, I know these people can't leave their homes to get food, and I'm not just going to let them starve. That's crazy. And so, yeah, I think people need to be asking their elected officials and candidates, what's actually happening with the clients. Like, are the clients okay? Are the clients being taken care of? Are these dollars, regardless of how they were documented, were the services given? Why is the United States of America, why is the federal government asking us for millions of dollars that they know we don't have? That is just going to continuously hurt those clients. And so even if those services weren't provided, now you're asking for the money back, which is going to lessen all the services we can give going forward. It's just cruel. It's cruel. And there's a way you can talk about these funds without saying that, you know, without dehumanizing the people that received the services. Because by saying you have to give us back those services, that those funds, you're saying that those services were never provided to those children. And that's a big accusation.
Right. You know, I read your Substack the other day, and you were talking about like the buy-in and what it costs, you know, because you're talking about, you know, being able to start an office and somebody wanted like $5,000 or something to be featured, right? And so, and I'll let you explain that, but yeah, just explain that, because I was very interested in reading that. So you want to?
Yeah. Running for Congress has been crazy. I'm not a politician, right? I'm 29 years old. Before I did all this, I made $50,000 a year, and I would sit with people and hold their hands after their husband died right next to us. I would go to Special Olympics with my clients and like celebrate them when they're winning, but then I would also, you know, have to drive clients to crisis shelters because something happened in their home. So I've been with people making not a lot of money for years. And I got into this and I was like, okay, this is not going to be that crazy, right? Like, I don't have to have millions of dollars. Wrong. Every consultant I talked to was like, the minimum you need to make is $500,000 before the primary. And you'll probably make between $1 and $5 million throughout the whole thing to the general if you make it. And I was just like, $1 million could pull my entire family out of poverty. And we're talking about it like, oh, just $1 million. No big deal. And so we got all of that. And then I tried getting voter access. So voter data access, you purchase it through your state's party, whether that's Republican or Democrat. And it's on a database called VAN, and it's Voter Action Network. And it compiles all of the voter data in your state for you. And so there is a reason for the costs, I can see, because it is a whole database that works for you. However, they charge you $6,000 to access voter data. So before I can actually reach any of my voters, I have to give the Maine Democratic Party $6,000 to get access to that. And I was like, oh, I don't have that. I'll have to call you back. And I kind of complained about it to a few people, and they were like, oh, well, you can just go to every municipality and get their voter rolls. There's over 340 municipalities in District 2. It's 27,000 square miles. Some of these municipalities have less than 15 people. And like maybe one of them is a Democrat.
And why does Van need to charge that much? How many people running for office are requesting this $6,000 list? Like, where's the checks and balances there? And is that a bipartisan organization?
No. So NGP, Van, and Act Blue are Democratic systems. And so my thought process going into this was, because they don't tell you how much it's going to cost online. Everyone's just like, call your Democratic Party and they'll give you the access. My thought process was, they give this to us because we've decided to put our name on the line and like fight for these votes. And so they're going to give us easy access to our voters. And that was not the reality. So I still haven't purchased that. We're in the process of, we've almost raised enough to purchase that, which will be great because then we can raise more. That's like how you raise money. And so you have to have money to raise money.
I don't like that. I don't like it at all.
No, I don't know anyone that just has $6,000 to throw down on a computer system.
Well, and like, where's the audit there? Like, how many, okay, this is what we're going to do, Paige. We're going to find some college kids and like we're going to have them flex AI and they're going to collect all those things from all those municipalities and then give it away for free and bankrupt Van. You heard it here, folks. I'm just kidding. But seriously, what the hell is that? That really makes me mad. You know what I mean? This is where the system is fundamentally broken. It is fundamentally broken. And why do you need to why? First of all, did I give Van permission to sell my name?
Oh man, I am so glad you brought that up, Molly. When I was first told I had to purchase the data, so as a social worker, I follow a very strict code of ethics, and it's on my website. It's the foundation for the decisions I make in my personal life, my professional life. That's the basis I'll make my votes on, because I just think like, you hear Republicans and religious people, they're like, oh, my foundation is my belief in God. Well, that can change, right? You can interpret that however you want to interpret it. You cannot interpret a code of ethics. And so one of the big things in this code of ethics is like self-determination and self-disclosure. And I really had to have a serious conversation with some of my like social work peers. And I was just like, I'm purchasing people's, like, it's public data because it's voter data. But someone else is selling it.
Why are they getting profits off of that? It's broken.
Yeah. And in Maine, $6,000 is pretty cheap actually, because some states charge
I would
way
imagine
more.
I bet like California, New York, it's probably like bananas.
Yeah, some states are free. Like I believe in Florida, you can get it for free. So it really depends on this. It's the state Democratic Party that decides how much it costs.
Listen, I feel like a big reckoning is coming, Paige, with like the Democratic Party in a lot of ways and stuff like this, because it's just the whole system is broken. The ship is rotten from the bow to the whatever the back of the boat's called. It's a mess. So why when people look at you and they go, "Oh, she's 29, she's from Oklahoma. What does she know?" What would you say to somebody who says that to you? What would be your response to that?
Well, I am from a state that Paula Paige wants to make Maine. I am from Oklahoma, which I'm so proud to be from Oklahoma. But I am from a state that ranks lowest in things like education and healthcare access, and highest in teen pregnancy and maternal incarceration, and other horrible things, like all the statistics. They're one of the highest rated crime per capita states, which is like crazy. They're one of the highest ranked for trafficking because of all the way like the highways go into Oklahoma.
Highways, yeah.
I'm from a place where Paula Paige that's what he wants. Those are the policies he amplifies. What, MAGA, what this administration is doing right now happened in Oklahoma a decade ago. It's already been happening in Oklahoma and Texas. We've been living through what this administration is doing on a countrywide scale. And Paula Paige wants that for Maine. I also think I am the only person in this race that's actually affected by the majority of the decisions Congress makes. I am a renter, and so I'm the only one whose rent could go up in the middle of this race and I'd have to move. I had to quit my job. I'm the only one that is not working or not already a millionaire. I'm the only one that doesn't own a home, right? Most of them own more than one home. But also I go into people's homes every single day. in different people's homes. I go into Republicans' homes, I go into Democrats' homes, I go into just the disaffected, not interested in politics at all homes, and it sucks for everyone. And whenever people ask me questions about like policy choices or why I would make a certain decision, it's because I have actual stories and people behind me and not just like talking points. I'm not just blaming everything on Donald Trump. Like, this was bad before Donald Trump. I was in people's homes during Biden's presidency and no one was having a good time then either. And so I think just being very honest about this is not a Democratic problem. This is not a Republican problem. Things are working the way they were supposed to work. And we have an administration that's taking advantage of that. And they're destroying everything that holds up some of our most vulnerable. And as a social worker, I think we need social workers in office during this next term and beyond, because we have to rebuild these systems. And I, for one, do not want an IT guy or a poli-sci guy or a lawyer being in charge of rebuilding our food systems and our healthcare systems. Or any of these social safety nets. I just don't want someone that has no experience or those first person stories. You know, when I make a decision, I think a lot about the people that I work with and like how that decision would affect them. And I don't see anyone else in this race or a lot of the races around the country where they can go, oh, I have 20 people in my brain right now that this policy would affect differently, every single one of them, and have an idea of how it would affect them. So yeah, I just think we need more people that work with people in Congress. And so it's very scary, but I'm having a great time. And I loved things like this, where I get to talk about, you know, why I decided to run for Congress, like this population in specific. I just hold so dear to me, and hearing, you know, this administration and specifically like Paula Paige and some of the people running for governor in Maine, they're turning it into a topic that no one is willing to defend. And I'm watching our state that's run by Democrats avoid the topic instead of going, yeah, there's a lot of people that are really upset about the care they're receiving, and we should be really honest about that. They're just letting them say whatever they want to about them and make them out to be the worst people, calling them the worst things, letting these narratives grow and build and get angrier, instead of defending them and admitting to your mistakes. Just, yeah, the audit's right there. We can all see the results. Now we should talk about how we make it better for the people that are receiving the services, and no one even wants to touch it. They're like, nope, we don't want to touch this. We don't want to get involved. And it's giving the other side a chance to really, really affect our clients in a really negative way.
Drive that narrative home. Well, you know, I have a lot of friends that own restaurants, and they'll all tell me, if I had known what I know now, I never would have opened that restaurant. And so ignorance is bliss. Ride that wave, Paige, because, you know, like, we need some of that young blood out there, because if not you, who? You know what I mean? If not now, when, right? Like Maryam Rajavi in Iran says, we can and we must, you know? And I feel that to my core. And I really respect that, like, you know, you're seeing these people firsthand. You know, it's one thing to look at data on a page or numbers, but it's another thing when you, like, you know, you see that person suffering and you feel their pain and you see it and you're trying to help them. You know, it's a different situation than just some narrative or talking points. And I feel like the world has just been way too influenced by business plans and tech bros and vanity metrics and all this shit that doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, you know, Costa Rica's a lot like Maine. Like, there's some neighbors I don't like, but if, like, they got bit by a snake, I'd be over there in 2 seconds. You know what I mean? Like, I might be like, you're an idiot for voting for Trump on my way out. But I'm still going to help them because I live on the side of a mountain 30 minutes from a doctor. You know what I mean? Like, it's a different vibe. And I know Maine is like that too. And, like, you know, none of us want to be here, right? Like, none of us want to be on this political thing, right? Like, people are like, you're so political. I'm like, yeah, I really wish I wasn't. I really wish I didn't have to be. My life would be so much easier if I could just check out and not care. Like, I wish for that every day for myself, but it's just not how I'm built. And I've never been that way. And I'm not going to change now. So, like, here we are, you know? So I hope that, this podcast gets out in front of some people in Maine and some younger people. I would personally encourage people to like help you volunteer for your campaign, donate, hang up signs. Let's all call Van and find out why they're charging $6,000. Like, who's the dumb? I'm serious. I'm pissed off by that. I get like laser focused on things like that.
The worst part about that too is like, I got that request, and then a few weeks later, after I had not paid them the $6,000 because I don't have it yet, I got a text asking me if I could throw down, the actual words used in the text were throw down $1,000 to match a contribution made by another candidate who I will not name, who put their name on a private flyer for a private event. And I saw the words throw down to match, and I just like looked at my husband and I was like, I only made 50 of those last year. I can't just throw one of those down. What do you mean throw down $1,000? And so it feels very grifty sometimes. But it is, with or without the money, I've had so much fun just like meeting Mainers and them hearing that there's a 29-year-old woman running in this race. People are like, whoa, that doesn't happen. And so I don't know. It's going to be fun. Hopefully I get all the boys into a room together and they have to stand next to a super young gal.
Endlessly. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes.
Listen, I think that no matter what happens, Paige, it's going to be a great experience for you because you're going to learn so much. And so win or lose, like it's going to be a whole new page at the end of this thing, and your purpose will become more clear and more solidified, and you will know exactly what's next, whether that is being Congresswoman for Maine or not. But I believe that like this is excellent. Our friend Molly, another Molly, was there's not that many. It's just me and her and a bunch of golden retrievers holding it down. But she said you're the real deal, and I appreciate that because we got to get out there and never underestimate the power of a woman, right? Really, like, right. There's that Margaret quote where she says, never underestimate the power of a small group of concerned citizens, but also never underestimate women, even alone. Okay, we can do a lot of damage and we can do a lot of good things. And I believe that when you've seen that suffering firsthand and you care, it like drives you in a different way versus like maybe some of the motivation behind some of the other people running. Like dude who dropped out because he wasn't going to win the other race. We're not doing that, okay? This is like love is blind when like the one person picks somebody else and like they're number one and they're gone and they're like, okay, I guess I'll marry someone else in the room, right? Like this is not who we want to elect for any race at all. So we won't name any names, but vote for Paige Loud. Loud for Congress. Loudforcongress.com. I will make sure to put all the notes and all the things here so people can find you. They can donate, they can volunteer, they can, help in lots of different ways. And Paige, if you would like to come back at any time and have one of those roundtable conversations with some of your clients or with some other people, listen, you consider me a resource and a platform, and you can bring that conversation here anytime. I'd be happy to host it. And I'm going to do some research on Van, and because I really want to understand how this works. If the Democrats want a blue wave, then don't charge us for it. Like, what? Right. That makes me so mad, and I'm a businesswoman. Like, that is how my brain works, right? Like, I'm a artistic businesswoman, you know what I mean? So like I'm crying all the time, but I'm good at business. And like that's just not good at that's just not smart. You want us to win, then why are you making it so hard for us? That doesn't make any sense. They should be releasing all of those names to every single person who wants to run. And that is where the Democratic Party is failing, because why do they get to decide who runs based on who can afford that list or not? Why don't you get that list, and then if you can get a majority of them, then you shake out and who can it's like running the first race of something. Well, let everybody get up on there and see who shakes out. You don't say pay an entry fee to see if you're good enough. This is why we're all losing, right? This is it. This is the core of the problem, right? Yeah. When I read your Substack the other day, I was like, son of a... But listen, I can only shut down one organization a day, you know what I mean, Paige? It's exhausting being me sometimes. I'm like, oh, I haven't even had coffee yet. So, Thank you for this time. I'm really excited. I'm going to get this episode out really quickly for you. Good luck with your launch event tonight.
Thank you.
I hope lots of people come visit your website and shout you out on social media and follow you on all the accounts. And please let us know if there's anything that we can do to be supportive to you and your campaign moving forward. We'd be happy to do so.
Awesome. Yes, this was so nice. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And if there's anything, is there one final thing you would like to leave our audience with before we go?
Treat everyone like you'd want to be treated. That's what I live by. That's like what I want to do in this campaign. I really think we need a different view of the world right now. We're all so angry and upset, and like my launch party tonight, it's gonna be fun, like free hot dogs and karaoke, and I just want to make this fun. I want to make it fun and young, and campaigns are boring and life is really hard right now. And so find the joy. Go to fun stuff like my party, and just try to have a good time, because we have to get through this with joy. Anger is not going to let us get through.
Amen. I'm going to go find some joy because I've been pretty mad lately. Paige, I've been burning bridges down, blowing them up first and then burning them down. So I will take your advice myself and go find some joy. Thank you. Best of luck tonight. I'm going to make a donation even though I'm not in Maine, but that's what we do. We support each other. I respect what you're doing. I think, what is that Albert Einstein quote that says, like, only the crazy people think they could do something, whatever it
like
is.
Over and over again. Yeah.
And you know what? Like, just run head first into that thing. There's no losing here. And I'm sure you'll inspire other people, other younger people, other women to get involved and
Other
step
social
up
workers.
and social workers, because you guys are really seeing it. And so never underestimate like how important your voice is and how much it matters. Even just one little tiny cog in the machine, can really make a difference. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. On that note, we will see you. Thank you all for tuning into the podcast. It's been really getting a lot of downloads lately, and I appreciate that. I hope this is a little solace from the storm that is American politics right now. Please consider sharing this content. Follow me and Paige on Substack. We're both there. And share this around. Consider recommending our Substacks to your Substack. I don't really know how this works. I feel like my mom on Substack sometimes. It's like a whole new platform. But show some love, make that donation, and until the next time, be good to each other. Thank you.
Produced by Heartcast Media.